13,000 feet over the ocean, the pilot's efforts seem to pay off. The plane's nose starts to rise, but it's still inverted.
Okay, let's kick rudder. Left rudder. Left rudder.
The pilots are kind of hanging upside down like bats, and it was very difficult to reach the rudder pedal.
Left rudder. I can't reach it. Okay, right rudder. Right rudder.
Their one hope is if they could kick that rudder, they could flip the plane back over.
Okay. We gotta get it over again. At least upside down we're flying.
As the pilots fight to get the plane the right way up, the engines on Flight 261 fail.
There was a disruption in the airflow into the engines, and it caused a loss of thrust.
Speed brakes. Got it.
Their demeanor was determined, collected. They were giving everything they had.
The windscreen's full of the ocean. They're not going to solve this.
Here we go!
He's hit the water. He's down.
Search and rescue helicopters are immediately dispatched from Coast Guard stations. Search teams find debris floating 2.7 miles north of Anacapa Island off the coast of California.
In addition to pieces of the plane, searchers are finding personal effects: a shoe, a passport, a postcard.
Aviation safety advocate Mary Schiavo represents the families of 6 passengers from Flight 261.
I remember this person's possessions. All the pictures were still in the wallet, in the pants pocket. Except for the picture of his wife. And so we knew by that and by how they found things that he had been clutching. That was really important to her.
Rescuers search for survivors throughout the night. None are found. All 88 passengers and crew on board Flight 261 are dead.
It's a terrible, tragic thing, of course. But, you know, we have a real well-established procedure here for how these tragedies are handled.
Investigators from the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, are assigned to find an explanation for the crash.
LAX maintenance is saying the pilots reported a jammed stabilizer.
NTSB systems investigator Jeff Guzzetti joins the investigation.
We knew quite a lot just from the transmissions between the flight crew and Los Angeles.
Maybe they had a mechanical problem.
Looks like they tried both switches. No luck.
The plane pitched. Full nose trim down.
We immediately began to research the horizontal stabilizer trim system to see how it was designed, how it functioned, and how the crew operated it normally.
The leading edge of the horizontal stabilizer is raised or lowered by a jack screw. When activated, it moves up or down through an Acme nut, changing the angle of the horizontal stabilizer.
We need to see the jack screw assembly. Let's hope it's all in one piece.
Investigators wonder how the horizontal trim system could have failed.
I'll get this to the Navy.
Recovering parts of the stabilizer system could give investigators important clues. But the wreckage field lies on the bottom of the ocean at a depth of 700 feet, well beyond the reach of scuba divers.
We were able to tell the Navy what to look for, what the high priority targets were.
U.S. Navy crews use side-scan sonar to pinpoint the location of the wreckage. Remotely operated vehicles equipped with robotic arms are used to recover pieces of Flight 261. The black boxes are retrieved 2 days after the crash. 9 days into the investigation, essential parts of the horizontal stabilizer are also recovered.
We got the jack screw.
And with the brain power we had a fighting chance to find out exactly what went wrong during this flight.
Super Ships, Giants of the Seas, Tuesday night at 9. New to National Geographic.
Can traveling make you happier? We think so. Every weekend, make memories all over the world with Nat Geo Travel.
Wow, what an experience! This explosion of flavor. I am so excited.
So, are you coming with us? Your bucket list of adventures starts here. Nat Geo Travel. Today at 4:10 p.m. on National Geographic.
You guys ready? All right, guys, let's go, let's go!
At Zoo Tampa, our commitment is to each of the 1,100 individual animals in our care.
Love their little faces. We'll do anything for them. We're really lucky to be here. This is why we do what we do.
Secrets of the Zoo Tampa, tonight at 8:30. New to National Geographic Wild. To live off the grid, there's only one rule.
To adapt and change your ways of living, you won't survive.
Alaska, the next generation. Thursday nights at 10. New to National Geographic.
Our biggest rival has been Mother Nature.
Let's get in before the storm! Forward, forward, forward!
Oh my God. This is what I live for. I'm gonna will it to the finish line.
Yes! We're gonna find out who the real king of the South is.
Wicked Tuna, North versus South. Tonight at 9. New to National Geographic.
What's this stuff?
Investigators wonder if recovered parts from the horizontal stabilizer of Flight 261 can provide clues about why it failed.
It's some kind of metal.
What they see is puzzling.
We saw this little thin piece of metal that we thought looked like a slinky. That really struck us as something very odd.
Why isn't the nut attached to the jack screw?
Normally, the lower end of the jack screw is threaded through an Acme nut.
When we looked at that and saw that the jack screw wasn't part of the Acme nut, we asked ourselves, how can that happen? That really just blew our mind.
The jack screw and the Acme nut were found a few feet apart.
They must have separated mid-flight.
Threads 1/8 of an inch thick inside the nut should hold it securely to the jack screw.
Look at this.
There's something unusual about the nut.
Incredible.
It's completely stripped.
When we finally looked inside the Acme nut, it revealed that there were no threads inside of it.
Let's talk to metallurgy.
It was shocking and stunning to us to see something like this. No one thought that you could get those thick threads to rip out.
Interesting.
Metallurgist Joe Epperson examines the stripped nut and the jack screw.
It became immediately apparent that what we were looking at was actually the remainder of the threads that were inside the nut.
Looks like the jack screw stripped the threads of the Acme nut.
And the next step in the process was to figure out how the threads were reduced to such an extreme degree and then stripped out of the nut.
There's some grease here on the bottom.
The team studies residue observable on the jack screw.
The way to prevent wear is by lubrication with grease. And in the case of an extreme wear event, you want to look at, is there grease where it's supposed to be?
And there's some here at the top.
In flight, the jack screw rotates inside the nut. To prevent wear, it needs to be lubricated regularly.
There should be more grease here in the middle. That's the working area where it rotates the most.
When we first looked at the jack screw, there was very minimal signs that there was any grease on it at all.
It was in the ocean for a week. Did the water wash the grease away?
Nah, I don't think so. Grease doesn't wash off that easily. There's still some remnants here, but none in the middle.
We did find a little bit of a remnant of a grease at the very upper end and at the very lower end. It was very easy to conclude that being in the ocean had not washed away the grease from the working area of the jack screw.
How could it be that there's so little grease on this jack screw?
Grease goes through here during the lubrication process.
During maintenance, grease is applied to the interior of the nut through a small valve called a Zerk fitting.
So, the Zerk fitting is this fitting right here. And what mechanics have to do is put a grease gun hose in here and then squirt grease into this little grease fitting that goes inside this passage. So that Zerk fitting should have preserved and kept the remnants of whatever grease it saw last.
What's that?
It's packed with dried grease.
I've been around grease long enough to know that if you don't replenish it, and if you just leave it, eventually it dries up and gets hard, and it basically says that it had not been replenished.
How long has it been clogged like this?
At least a year, maybe more.
Finding this blockage suggests long-term abuse of the grease.
I'd say we have a maintenance issue here.
Time to talk to the airline.
We were very suspicious about how well this component was lubricated, or whether it was lubricated at all. And so we had our doubts as to whether or not this component was being properly maintained by the airline.
NTSB investigators travel to Alaska Airlines operations facility in San Francisco.
You worked on the plane in September 1999, that true?
Yes, I did.
They track down the mechanic who was responsible for the last lubrication of the jack screw assembly 4 months before the accident.
Could you walk us through how you lubricate the jack screw assembly?
I'll tell you this.
It's not my favorite job.
The team learns that jack screw lubrications are done most often on the night shift, outside the hangar, sometimes in the rain.
You're working off high-lift trucks, which will sometimes move with a gust of wind. The airplane moves with a gust of wind. You're up and 30 feet off the ground. Some mechanics don't like that job. They're not stable up there.
To reach the jack screw assembly, remove a panel first.
How do you apply the grease?
I use a paintbrush. Sometimes I put a big glob in my hand to make sure it's on there.
Aircraft, especially large aircraft, need grease. They need to have lubricants, and it's messy.
The most effective way is to fill your hand with grease and actually move it up and down on the jack screw, filling all the screw grooves, filling them with grease.
What about greasing the Acme nut?
Investigators focus on how the mechanic greased the Acme nut on the jack screw.
We use a grease gun to the Zerk fitting.
You pump grease in until you see fresh grease coming out.
Well, how do you know whether the lubrication is being done properly and when to stop pumping the grease gun?
I don't.
Would you be able to see the grease coming out from the top of the Acme nut during lubrication?
No, I can't remember looking to see if there was.
One of the first things that tells me is that he couldn't have known that that Zerk fitting has taken grease. You have no idea that it's clogged.
So we found a variety of ways in which mechanics lubricated this component, and that gave us some pause because it's a very critical component, and if you don't lubricate it properly, you could end up with an accident like the one that just happened.
The team discovers that the methods Air Alaska mechanics use to lubricate the jack screw assembly don't follow maintenance standards.
The last time the jack screw was lubricated was about 4 months before the accident.
But it's not just the way the jack screw assembly is being lubricated that bothers investigators. It's also the frequency.
And before that?
January 1999. They're doing it every 2,500 hours.
They can see there's a long period between lubrications.
Is that even within regulations?
I'll find out.
We knew we had kind of a research project on our hands. Some of the documents that we requested from the manufacturer, from the FAA, from the airline, came in the form of internal memorandums from engineering departments or requests from maintenance to extend an interval. It really began to paint a picture of how the lubrication intervals were extended.
Check it out. The airline made multiple requests to extend the intervals on the lubrications. In 1987, the interval between lubrications was 500 hours.
The intervals between lubrications are measured by the number of hours the plane is in the air.
In 1991, it goes up to 1,200 hours. By 1996, it increases all the way up to 2,500 hours.
They just continued to extend.
Approved by the FAA?
Yeah, every one of them was approved.
Investigators conclude that the lubrication of jack screws was not only conducted poorly, it was also performed less and less frequently.
If you're going to extend these lubrication functions, then you better be doing something to make sure that what you're doing is correct.
But even if the lubrication wasn't being done properly, regular inspections should have caught the wear on that Acme nut.
True. They should have inspected it regularly.
Was the jack screw assembly on Flight 261 inspected when and how it should have been?
We looked at the maintenance records for information about the last check.
I've got something.
Investigators dig deeper into the records of Flight 261 to find out how the jack screw assembly was inspected.
Yeah, this doesn't look right to me.
The team finds paperwork which reveals that during a routine inspection, a mechanic at the airline's Oakland facility observed that the Acme nut was badly worn.
You sure the reading is .040?
A mechanic who did that wear check reported that he found it to be at the limit. This nut was wearing fast and something needed to be done.
The lead mechanic ordered the nut to be replaced.
This was evidence that someone had caught the fact that this Acme nut was worn out.
Most airlines, the decision would be, we will get the piece to the airplane as soon as possible and replace it.
But the entry is crossed out. I don't get it.
Well, when we saw that they had crossed out the first entry, it was very suspicious. Something was up. It was fishy to us.
We have to find out what went on here.
This April on National Geographic Network. Massive machines require engineering extremes.
These are the most powerful devices ever produced by mankind.
We strip down these big ideas to reveal the makings of the world's greatest mechanical marvels. Cargo ships move the world, but they are also gargantuan polluters. We go beyond the vessel to meet with the pioneers hoping to turn the tide.
We use renewable energy and hydrogen. These solutions are available for a clean future.
Join our very own explorer, Albert Lynn, as he traverses the globe to map out the ancient civilization.
Something incredible happened here about 800 years ago.
All week long, see wildlife at its most brutal as we bring you up close to some of the most lethal predators on the planet. All new this April on National Geographic Network.
Welcome to America's busiest border patrols, where the law and the lawless face off.
Hey, push it in!
And this Wild West just got wilder.
People in the trunk. Now that the COVID restrictions are being loosened, we're seeing an uptick in smuggling activities.
Get inside access as federal agencies work around the clock to catch modern-day outlaws.
This is the first time I've ever seen this.
To Catch a Smuggler, Thursday nights at 11. New to National Geographic.
My travels around the world have taken me far.
That's incredible.
But everywhere I go, I'm determined to uncover the missing pieces that connect these stories of our collective past.
This was once somebody's home.
And through advanced technology, I can help reveal those ancient worlds, stretching far beyond their known boundaries.
That's crazy. It's an incredible feat of engineering, of design, of imagination.
Ancient Worlds Revealed with Albert Lynn, Wednesday nights at 9, new to National Geographic.
Machines are getting bigger and better with each engineering innovation. Find out what really goes on under the hood of some of the world's greatest mechanical marvels. Colossal Machines, Monday nights at 9, new to National Geographic.
Do you remember inspecting an MD-83 on September 27th, 1997? I remember it well.
Investigators contact John Leotine, the lead mechanic who reported the worn Acme nut on Flight 261.
I wrote up the evaluation. The nut is worn down. Replace it.
It was an alarming discovery. In order for that aircraft to be safe to fly, that nut assembly at the very least must be replaced. There's no doubt in my mind.
It was the end of my shift. When I came back the next workday, the plane was closed up. The plane returned to service with the worn nut.
If the nut had been replaced, the plane would still be flying. and 88 people would still be alive.
How could a maintenance facility allow the airplane to be put back into revenue service with the wear that it found on the Acme nut?
When investigators probe further, they learned that the amount of wear on the Acme nut was rechecked by other mechanics. They determined that it was just within minimum limits. Alaska Airlines maintenance misses a warning sign. The wear on the nut should at least have been monitored, but it wasn't.
The next time that jack screw was looked at was in the NTSB laboratory.
The plane flew with the worn nut for 2 more years before it took off from Puerto Vallarta on the day of the accident.
You're up.
First Officer Tansky and Captain Thompson had no idea that their stabilizer was on the verge of failure.
That's strange. The plane's out of trim.
The team turns to the voice recorder to find out how the devastating chain of events unfolded on board Flight 261.
Let's check this out. Autopilot off?
Good idea.
Whoa!
13 minutes after takeoff from Puerto Vallarta, the worn threads in the Acme nut cause the jack screw to jam, preventing movement of the horizontal stabilizer.
Try it again.
The captain's trying to rectify the jam stabilizer.
While cruising at 31,000 feet, the CVR picks up the sound of a click followed by a thump.
We think that the pilot was moving his thumb switch on his yoke in an attempt to move the jack screw through the nut.
The threads finally give way, and the jammed jack screw pulls up through the nut, causing the stabilizer to move upwards. A stopper is all that prevents it from separating completely.
It got worse.
With the horizontal stabilizer pushing the nose further down, the plane goes into a dive. Through sheer brute force, the pilots hold the jack screw in place and recover the plane.
Okay, it really wants to pitch down. You feel that?
Stop. Let's hear that again.
But 8 minutes later, there's another series of thumps.
You feel that?
The stopper holding the jack screw in place finally gives out.
Push and roll!
The damage to the stabilizer makes Flight 261 uncontrollable. The plane rolls over and dives towards the ocean.
Push the blue side up.
Flying upside down, the crew makes a last-ditch attempt to right their plane.
Speed brakes. Got it.
The pilots of Flight 261 give everything they have to save the plane.
It was just total professional fighting for that plane till the very end, and they expressed the realization that the fight was over.
Here we go!
I was sickened by what I listened on the CVR. This accident could have been prevented.
If they grease that jack screw, this doesn't happen.
The amount of money that would have saved these lives It's a cup of coffee. It's literally a few dollars of grease. I still get angry about it.
In the wake of the accident, the intervals between jack screw lubrications at Alaska Airlines is reduced from 2,500 hours to 650 hours.
We lost 88 people because of lack of lubrication. This is a maintenance accident, pure and simple. It is truly a tragedy.
It was just one of those cases that you work on that's never going to leave you. Not ever. It was tough.
The peak of modern-day aviation, a routine tried and tested, and yet disaster could strike